them and have our next one.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here today. Today we'll be looking at the impact of human activity on harbor seal habitat at Goff Island in Laguna Beach, California. And I'm going to turn it over to Emma to give us our background.
So last year I was taking a research and techniques like marine mammal class with a professor here. And we went out to Goff Island, which is actually not an island, but a outcropping of rocks that juts out from the shore. And we saw these harbor seals, and I had never seen harbor seals so close. But what we also noticed was, as you can see in the picture, there were people going on the tide pooling, and also trying to get really close to these animals. And through partnership with a local organization called the Harbor Seals of Orange County, we decided to conduct research and see if these animals were being impacted. So to give everybody a little bit of background information on what these guys are, why they're important to our ecosystems, firstly, they're really cute. They are typically a couple different colors between black, gray, tan, brown. They each have unique markings, which can be little spots or rings. And some people get them confused with sea lions. So sea lions are going to stand on their front flippers and they're going to bark and act more like a dog. Seals are going to lay on their stomachs and they're going to move around a lot more like a worm. The males are between 5 to 6 feet in length and can reach a weight of up to 300 pounds. The females are going to be a little bit smaller and weigh a little bit less. And they're super important for ecosystems, especially our local kelp forest environments, because as one of the top predators in these environments, they help to balance prey populations, which increases the biodiversity as well as the productivity in those environments.
So harbor seals have a pretty wide geographic distribution along temperate and subarctic waters. Here on the west coast, they're found from Alaska down to Baja, which includes right here in Orange County. According to NOAA, this is a species that spends roughly 50% of its life on land, which translates to about 7 to 12 hours every day. So located in Laguna Beach, Goff Island consists of a beautiful cove which attracts a lot of beachgoers and snorkelers to the area. But as Emma mentioned, this area is also essential harbor seal habitat. So highlighted here in orange is the intertidal zone where these animals will haul out. And this is essential for them to maintain stable body temperatures or thermoregulation, as well as to rest. And both of those are really key because it balances out the time they spend hunting in a cold ocean as warm-blooded marine mammals. And in addition to that, they also will birth and nurse pups in this area, as well as avoid predators. What's important as well to note here is that this land habitat fluctuates with the tides, so depending on the water height, they could have more or less area to haul out.
So our hypothesis was that an increase in human activity on this harbor seal habitat would lead to an increase in the number of harbor seal stress responses that were observed. In order to determine if this was true, as I said, we partnered with Harbor Seals of Orange County, a local organization led by marine scientist Kirsten Donald, and we conducted 159 land-based scan sampling surveys between June of 2023 all the way through September of 2024. And we looked at multiple different variables, but we're mainly concerned with human activity in that area as well as the harbor seal responses.
So to give you guys an understanding of those harbor seal behaviors and how to spot them, we've put together this ecogram. So hauling out is where the seal will come onto land to rest. This could be on sand or rocks. In this case, it's along those rocks. Resting can be seen where the animal has its head down and eyes closed. And then flushing is where the seal will retreat back into the water, and this is often a response to perceived stress or danger. And then lastly, of head lifting. That's where the seal will raise its head and kind of scan its surroundings, and they're looking for some kind of disturbance or predators. This is also often a response to stress or perceived danger.
So these next few pictures are just going to be showing you guys some examples of some of these behaviors. This one obviously is resting. The animal has its head down and is exhibiting maybe a sleep behavior. It's me after I get out of class. And then we have the disturbance. So these humans are clearly less than 50 feet away from these animals, and just like if I was sleeping, I wouldn't want somebody standing there and kind of bothering me trying to take a picture. So we're going to zoom in, and you can see the head lifting behavior that is being exhibited. So they're all looking towards that disturbance, and they're kind of trying to distinguish whether or not those humans are a predator that's going to prey on them.
So in order to analyze the data, we divided those 159 scan sample surveys into 2 sets. And this was distinguished by whether humans were present, which is not highlighted, and humans were absent, which is highlighted in blue. And each row here is a survey. So from there, we eliminated the snorkeler surveys, and that was because while we did see clear seal disturbance in the data, we were just looking at land-based disturbance. So that left us with 86 surveys, 43 of each type, and from there we calculated the totals of these 4 columns. So that's the total number of seals hauled out, as well as exhibiting each response behavior, and then we converted those totals to percentages. So what we found was in the data set with humans absent from seal habitat, 90% of the seals were resting and 10% were headlifting. And with humans present in seal habitat, 82% of the seals were headlifting and 18% were resting. And according to a study from Alaska Fish and Game, there's been physiological evidence of stress from human presence, and this was observed during headlifting behavior. The way they conducted this was they monitored the heart rate of the seals, and they saw an increase during headlifting. So this really aligns with our thoughts.
So in order to deal with this, the Marine Mammal Protection Act is really key in our everything that we're kind of doing. It's also known as the MMPA. It is a U.S. federal law that was enacted in 1972 in order to prevent the extinction of marine mammals, which could also lead to negative environmental impacts. We also don't want to let any of these animals go extinct because of our anthropogenic or human impacts. What it does is it defines the word take as the attempt or successful attempt to harass, hunt, capture, or kill a marine mammal. Another way that you can think about this is anything that kind of disrupts the animal's natural behavior. So even if it's just headlifting to look at you, this is considered a take. It also says that we should maintain a 150-foot distance, not just from the marine mammals themselves, but also from their habitat. It's important to understand that we want to be away from their habitat as well, because although you might not see a seal hauled out on the rocks, there might be one swimming in the water who's trying to haul out who can't if you're there. Another way to think about 150 feet is 4 to 5 car lengths. I know myself, I'm not very good at it, so that's a better way to remember. And it's important to understand that it's always possible to maintain this distance from these animals, but we do also know that it's a lot more challenging to maintain this distance from their habitat, especially when their habitat is so close to land that we as beachgoers also tend to enjoy. But it's important that we try our best so that these animals can be less stressed.
So an excellent tool to implement the Marine Mammal Protection Act as a conservation measure is signage. So what we're looking to do is to propose to the city of Laguna Beach that an educational sign is placed at Goff Island, and this would serve to inform beachgoers on why this land habitat is essential for these harbor seals and their daily functions. And we're actually not looking to reinvent the wheel in doing this. We're looking to apply a strategy that's already in use at several harbor seal haul-out sites along the California coast. So this consists of Children's Pool in La Jolla, as well as Hopkins Marine Life Refuge up in Pacific Grove. So both of those sites utilize signage to not only mitigate harassment of the harbor seals, but also to provide this kind of rare opportunity for visitors to see these animals exhibiting their natural behavior in an urban environment. So with that educational sign comes several benefits. As Emma mentioned, what we're looking to do is reduce the stress for these animals. Even on a human level, we can understand what stress does to health, and it has a huge impact. So in addition to that, with the ecosystem being very interconnected, what we're looking to do is also preserve the kelp forest that surrounds Goff, because that's a huge component in combating climate change because of its carbon absorption abilities.
So not only does it have environmental or ecological benefits, but there's also lots of human benefits. The most obvious one is an increase in tourism would lead to an increase in the revenues for the local businesses in the area. But then there's also wildlife education. Along the walk to see these seals, there's many spots where these types of binoculars could be installed, which could let locals as well as tourists kind of become closer with the animals and maybe want to learn a bit more and come check out our sign. There's also the opportunity to take children down and have different classes there, so that's all good. Lastly, it fits really well with Laguna City's ocean-centered values and policies. Laguna City has a very large marine protected area. They're very eco-friendly and water conscious, and so protecting these seals kind of goes along with everything else they're already doing. In the future, we plan to continue our research. At the beginning of my time in July of 2024, volunteering for Harbor Seals of OC, I noticed that the harbor seals would haul out a lot closer to shore. Over the last few months, me and the other volunteers have found that they've started to move back towards the end or cove area of the island, and we believe this to be due to human disturbance. In order to determine this, we are in the process of creating different zones that can tell us where the human is versus where the seal was, which can let us know if human activity in the area is causing them to relocate. In order to get better individual IDing done, we would need better camera equipment. These circles around the images are because we're taking these photos through binoculars because we're trying to maintain this 150-foot distance. Overall, we would just in the future like to see public access specifically just to this rock habitat, not the beach area, but we would like to see it restricted. For now, we're focusing on the educational sign because any protection or help we can give them is important, but that is our plan in the future.
So in conclusion, with our research supporting our hypothesis and seeing more harbor seal stress responses with humans present in seal habitat, we wanted to see what kind of community response was out there for this educational sign at Goff. And so we created a petition, and so far we've got a really positive response with over 1,000 signatures. And I say this as someone who loves the beach and loves going tide pooling myself, but it's really important to understand that balance of, wildlife health as well as human recreation. And so giving these animals that space is really important. What's good to note here is that even within a 5-mile vicinity of Goff, there's other tide pools to look at. So it's important to give these seals that space. If you have any interest in volunteering with us and monitoring these harbor seals, please feel free to reach out. And we would just like to say a quick thank you.
So we just want to say thank you, first of all, to Harbor Seals of OC and the marine scientist person Donald for sharing our data with us. Also for our mentors, Karen Baker and Jeff Armstrong, and for Professor Mary Lassius, because without her class, I would not have been inspired to do this research. So thank you.
Questions? I noticed that you only use the head raising behavior as the increase in stress, like for the measured. Were the other behaviors also, were they also higher as when humans are present, the other stress-related behaviors?
So looking at the data, they didn't really flush whether humans were present or not. And this can be due to the fact that it's very energy costly, and they have to come back on land and dry off again. So.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Is there, have you perceived some resistance to putting the signs or blocking off that area? Like what hasn't it been done yet?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this project actually kind of came out of why, when I went there and I noticed there was no signage, there was nothing blocking it off, so I was like, why is that? When I did a little bit more digging, the city of Laguna, although they are very eco-friendly, like water conscious, they are very resistant to this sign. We're not really sure why. What we've been told from other people is if they give us a sign, then they're gonna have to give everybody else a sign. And that doesn't really make sense to us, but that is kind of why we're doing this project, so we can prove to them, look, this is an issue, signage is needed. But that's a great question. Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, wonderful presentation. I really enjoyed it, and I'm a citizen. I'm a resident of Laguna, so I appreciate you taking care of the coast and again looking out for the critters that are out there. I know. I don't know if you had a chance to connect with the docents that are in Laguna. So there's a very active docent community that monitors the tide pools, and they are very strong advocates for the safety and well-being of the ocean creatures that are there. That could be another possible alternative to the signage if you run into roadblocks there. There's an army of people that are willing to stand guard over the harbor seals, and until such time like when a sign might be appropriate. So
I would love that idea. They are part of the issue, actually. So we have, unfortunately, we, like the Laguna Ocean Foundation, sometimes they do sit there and they sit on the sand and they block people from coming onto the rocks, which is great. However, recently, and I guess they've been doing this for a while because it seemed like something when we talked to them about it, it was something continuous. They're actually going on that land habitat themselves. I have lots of pictures of them there. I didn't want to out them, but they're going on there and they're letting people walk past them. So we actually talked to them and said, hey, like this isn't where we should be. We had Kirsten come and talk to you guys as well. and we were told that they would move, and then I want to say maybe less than a month ago, and this was after they were told, okay, we're gonna move, we went back out to just check on the seals, do another survey, and they were out back on the rock habitat again. So as much as I'd like to say that they would be helpful, it seems that even they are a little bit uneducated about what's going on. But thank you.
Yeah, of course.
All right, we got one more question. I think Kevin over there, maybe?
Well, I was just wondering if you've ever noticed behavior where they'll poke their head out and not actually go up on the rocks because they see.
Yeah, we've seen that many times. It's again very hard to get good images because like we're taking them through like these binoculars. So it's hard to like kind of, especially when they're in the water, it's really just like a small little dot. But yes, we have witnessed that multiple times, and that's something that in the future we're probably going to account in our data for a little bit more. But yeah, thank you.
Okay, round of applause. Thank you guys so much.